Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well, having an incredible day. Thank you so much if you are joining us here live for our live stream, and thank you also if you are going to be watching this later. Today I am joined by Joanne Doucette. Joanne is a dear colleague, and she's currently part of our online course mastermind for therapists, us developing our first online course. And Joanne's going to be here just sharing the raw and real of the course creation journey. I think one of the things that we really wanted to do is just give an honest perspective on things versus like a highlight reel perspective, because I think ultimately that doesn't help anyone, right? And so, Joanne, so thankful for you, and yeah, just grateful for our conversation.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, Melvin. And yeah, remembering myself watching some testimonials from past mastermind participants and how much it helped me. So it feels really great to be able to kind of come full circle and maybe do that for some others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you are joining us live, like we really want this to be interactive versus like a just an interview or almost like a performance. So if you're on YouTube and checking us out, feel free to leave comments in the comment section, questions you have, observations you have, any of that kind of stuff, because again, we are all learning together, and there's so many things that we all know collectively, and the whole point of these live streams is also just to help each other out. So, um, you started in private practice, I believe, in 2009. Is that right?
Yes, I started part time in private practice while I was working at the local hospital, the Children's Hospital, and kind of
Got it.
built up over a few years. And then eventually just made the switch and left the hospital and went into full time private practice. Yeah.
Got it. And then what is the general your private practice tends to, I know, focus on a couple of areas. What are those general areas and families and kiddos that you see?
Yeah, a lot around kids and families. And over the years, I've really kind of made a little bit of a switch from working with kids individually to doing a lot of parent support. And
Mm,
I also work a lot with families that are coping with illness and grief. So I get a lot of either bereaved parents or kids that have experienced the loss of a parent. So I do quite a bit of grief work as well.
yeah, I mean, it's cool for you to describe it, because what I hear in that is it's been an evolution versus like, I woke up today and this is my niche and now I built like a successful practice, right? Like this has been years in
Yeah.
the making and kind of leaning in and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like in private practice, I think like so many of us, I started very broad, kind of taking all the referrals, kids, adults, some couple work, and then realized it was such a, and actually that's something I really learned from your podcast. I started listening to Selling the Couch and really started realizing to get more specific about who I could serve best was helpful for me and also helpful for clients and marketing. So that really helped enrich my private practice when I started really focusing on what made me feel most passionate. And that's kind of
Mm.
something that's also helped with the online course journey, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's not exactly the norm, I think, for us, right, as clinicians, because most of us are taught to be generalists, right? And niching and all of that definitely doesn't come easy. Uh, it's also, I think, not the norm for like therapists in private practice to start thinking about online courses, right? I feel like more and
Mm-hmm.
more clinicians are, but what was happening for you, like both personally, professionally, that made you think like, hey, I think I might want to go down this online course path?
Yeah, it happened for me over a couple of years that I started thinking about it. One of the factors was I've always liked having something on the side of seeing clients, something that's sort of uses different parts of my brain. So I was teaching at the university here in Ottawa and teaching social work students and teaching clinical skills. And I really enjoyed that. It allowed me to to mentor others, to support. And so I was teaching when COVID hit and I had to move the whole course online because all the students were online for at this university for almost 2 years, and started realizing that there was some good things about that, and I had to
Mm,
really switch up the way I was teaching. And I liked parts of it, and that got me a little interested. I also created some of these online modules for the department because, again, they were kind of scrambling to support the education process. So it was kind of like everything in education really changed with COVID. And then the second thing that happened during that kind of couple of years was I started running these online groups over Zoom for parents
Hmm.
using this emotion focused family therapy model where we actually teach parents therapeutic skills.
Oh, wow.
And that was working quite well in this online format, but it was live Zoom calls, like a weekly session. And as I would kind of market more of the groups over time, I often had a difficulty getting enough participants, even though there's such a huge need for that, because a
Hmm.
lot of parents were often working. Also, kids would be home in the evenings. It was really hard for them to sometimes fit that call into their schedule. And I started thinking about whether for some families, having a different model where they could do things in their own, like on their own schedule and more flexibly would maybe reach more people. So, yeah, those were a few
Interesting.
of the factors that really got me thinking about it. And then I guess I started following. You were talking about online course creation. I had always been listening to your podcast, following you on LinkedIn, and checking out a few other resources too. So that really got that idea going.
Um, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And again, if you're joining us live, be sure to leave a comment, ask any questions. Again, as I shared, we're trying to keep this super chill and just be helpful. You said something, it was like a little nuance, which I wanted to go back to, which was you notice these live you were doing these live Zoom calls and parents were like not the groups were not filling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes as clinicians we can see that and we can be like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible product or this is like a terrible idea. How
Mm-hmm.
did you not how did you go from that or not embracing that to, hey, I wonder if it's more of a how it's presented.
Yeah, so one thing that helped was that when I did run the groups and I got enough people to put a group together, the feedback was always really good. I knew that
Mm,
a lot of this content and just breaking away from that traditional therapy model of doing everything like one on one
mm,
in this, 1 hour every week or every 2 weeks. So basically, I love group therapy to begin
mm,
with, and I've
mm,
always done group therapy in different settings. So I feel like as therapists, the need is so high for mental health support. And
mm,
for me, working in youth mental health, I mean, the need is huge. We're facing such a crisis with youth mental health. So I would get this positive feedback from the parents who could fit it in their schedule. And I knew there was value to what I was doing, but I
mm,
just knew that there's maybe another way to make sure that more people can access this and being open, right? That there's it's good to think about how we can serve people best.
mm,
And for example, if I was running the group in a day during the day, well, of course, teachers and nurses, like, they can't necessarily get away from work. They don't have that flexibility, and I didn't want to exclude those groups.
mm,
So yeah, I think that helped me, getting the positive feedback from people, and then seeing that there are a lot of online courses being offered that are obviously doing very well, that are really successful. This is sort of a growing area in the field. And I guess I had some faith that it was worth trying.
yeah. I think it's an amazing ability. I feel like many of us have it as clinicians, which is the ability to both simultaneously like feel that anxiety when things don't quite work out, but then also being able to look at trends as where things are going and all of that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. How did you get the feedback from the parents? Like, was it just like, would you do surveys? Because I'm sure that was like so empowering and validating, like the work you were doing.
Yeah, at the last session, I would give a little bit of feedback about what the group sessions had been like for me as the
Mm,
facilitator, and then I would invite people to share, and they often did. And they would often, talk about how feeling less alone in what they were dealing with by listening to other parents share some of their experiences, learning as a group, and hearing other examples of what was working well for the participants.
mm,
they really love that, and they would give feedback about that, or just the actual things we were learning, the content of the course. They would share a little, and then yeah, I would also send out a survey, and get some feedback that way. And specifically, sometimes some of these participants would also then do some follow up work with me. Like there was that invitation for them to do follow up to fine tune the skills. And they would talk about it in those sessions and let me know and give actually examples of what they were doing differently to
Uh,
support their kids that was working. So that was really reinforcing.
I'm so glad you said that because I think a lot of times clinicians can feel this pressure to almost create an online course idea, like pull it out of a magic hat kind of thing. But what you
Mm-hmm.
actually did is so like intentional, right? Like you started these as live, you got the feedback, you invited the folks that were on these parenting groups to do individual sessions with you, and then they were mentioning the examples, right? Like so, all of that, like I don't know, it's just so thoughtful in terms of like how you approached it. So I just wanted to, more than anything, like commend you
Thank
for that because I
you.
think that's very cool. Um,
Yes, I think it helped prepare me for some of what we're working on now in the mastermind for
mm,
sure. Um, Yeah, and even like I was just as you were talking, Mel, I was thinking about how also parents sometimes around the marketing, when I look back, it was quite broad what I was targeting. I was targeting parents of kids or teens that had a whole range of emotional struggles or mental health issues. They could have anxiety, depression. They could just be super feeler kids that were emotionally dysregulated. That was very broad.
mm,
So, what I started thinking about and what the mastermind has really helped with is, again, kind of like what I went through with private practice, getting more niched and getting
mm,
more specific. So that's what I've been working on with my course idea now. And so also I think I learned from running those groups some of what has been really reinforced and what we're learning as a group together about the
mm.
value of targeting a more specific audience, not being scared to get a little more specific. That's been super helpful.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to like us to dive a little deeper into like you said you've been learning some interesting things in the mastermind recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what are some of those? Even in terms of how you thought about your course versus
Mm-hmm.
like the feedback you've gotten and
Yeah, well, on that note of getting more niched, you've said, and I might not get it quite right, but we might repel some people but attract others
mm,
by with certain parts of the course idea we offer. So for me, deciding to focus specifically on parents of anxious teens versus the whole wide age range versus parents of kids with anxiety, depression, or other mental health issues,
mm-hmm,
I had to really work through that. And the group was helpful for that. Changing my mindset around, yes, there might be some people that look at it and think, oh, that's not for me because I have a younger child, or my
mm,
teen isn't anxious. They're dealing with this other issue. And that's actually okay. That was a big, I guess, a turning point for me to see
mm,
that that's actually a good thing.
mm,
So that would be one example for sure. Also, the mastermind really helped. Something that I needed to think about a lot is we talk about what are we already seeing in our sessions, like where's the need and what do we already know, what comes really naturally to us. I really loved the one session we did where we really explored our passions, our areas of work. We did that whole brainstorming activity where we put it all on a big piece of paper. And, like when you see it down on paper and you just do that brainstorming and not overthinking, but getting things out, that really helped me clarify that I actually love working with families of kids who are anxious because I feel really comfortable with treating anxiety. I feel really comfortable with the parent support. I already have a lot of knowledge in that area. So that helped really clarify that this would be a good course topic for me. I don't think that was clear when I came in. It might
mm,
have been a bit of an idea, but
yeah.
that became very clear with some support from the group.
Yeah. I think this is a common struggle that therapists have, right? Because, like in your case, you niched it to both a subsect of a population, right? So, not even all kids, but teens, and then
Mm-hmm.
also like presenting concern, right? And what was the scariest part of doing that?
I think maybe I had had another idea. You might remember I've
Mm,
been thinking about my grief work and how to
yeah,
support families going through grief, which is
yeah,
still something I love doing. And I
yeah.
may down the road do create something around that idea, but letting go of that was a little
Mm,
scary
mm,
because it is also something I'm passionate about. And probably what really helped me with that is I went in the warm and fuzzy seat one week, and the group really helped me and gave me like very honest feedback about aspects of that particular idea that might not be exactly right for me right now, and it helped me really zero in on this topic that I'm now focused on around parents of anxious teens. So yeah,
yeah,
I'm a big
it's
fan of the warm and fuzzy seat.
well, I wanted to ask you about that, but if you're checking us out live, again, feel free to leave any comments, any questions for Joanne. As I shared, we want to genuinely make this helpful,
Mhm.
especially if you are like either have an existing course, you're thinking about an online course, just some of the things that you're navigating, especially I think as clinicians, right? Like these aren't this is very like new territory, for many of us. And I think one of the best things that we can do is just be there for each other and help each other and kind of share what's working and not working and all of that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
you mentioned the warm and fuzzy seat a couple of times. So tell everybody what the warm and fuzzy seat is. First of all, why do we call it the warm and fuzzy seat versus like the hot seat, all that? So
Yeah, I think it gives us a chance to practice putting ourselves out there,
mm,
being a little more vulnerable and accepting support. So, yeah, the warm and fuzzy seat is sort of an hour that's set aside during certain weeks where people can come forward and have some time where the focus is on whatever issue they're struggling with in this moment. So yeah, I mean, people tackle all sorts of different questions or worries, and it may be very specific, like I need to come up with my course title, or it might have been like for me around my course idea. I was really struggling between these two ideas, and so then the person who's on the warm and fuzzy seat puts their issue out there, and you get feedback from, I mean, from you, from the group participants, and I've just seen it's, I really like when I've been able to receive the feedback when I've kind of come forward and taken a turn, but it also is so nice to be able to give that support to colleagues
mm,
and
yeah.
help them. And actually, just last week, I think it was when we did a warm and fuzzy seat. I remember one of our colleagues saying, "Oh, like this really reinforced for me, helping the person who was on the warm and fuzzy seat, that I actually do have a lot of ideas and I can do this." And
Mm,
so I think it builds our confidence when we're helping our colleagues. And there's some weeks where I've sort of left thinking, oh, this is almost like group therapy. It just feels so good. All of
yeah.
us therapists sort of having an opportunity to actually receive support, I think is so positive. So I've enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I think yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I think one really important thing, we do one-on-one calls with anybody that is interested in the mastermind, and a part of it is like just like similar to like setting up a group therapy group, right? Like we really want
Mm-hmm.
a therapist who embraces a certain mindset, who's both like entrepreneurial and thoughtful and all of those things, but also like willing to like give helpful feedback and doesn't open and receptive to feedback, all of that kind of stuff, and when you
Yeah.
put a lot of clinicians together that are doing that, I think it just creates such a cool aura because it's like
Mhm.
everybody levels up practically with their course but also mentally, and it's like we're all just like helping
Mhm.
each other like put these bricks together, and then we collectively build something, and you're like, oh my god, there's no way I would have done that on my own.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was part of my journey is that I had sort of been thinking about a few of these ideas and really taking in content, right? Like
Mm,
whether a lot from your content on LinkedIn and your podcast, but I was following some other online course creators as well and learning a lot about it, but I felt really stuck
mm,
with the actual take. I did take some steps. I started challenging myself to build a bit of a social media presence and build an audience. But when it came to actually moving forward more than that, I felt really stuck. And you kind of
mm,
have to know yourself. And started thinking about, okay, what helped me when I was creating courses for the university? Well, I had deadlines and I
Mm,
had a weekly class I had to teach with people waiting to learn from me. And that structure helped me move forward, right? And the trying to do it on my own, and I think especially a lot of us might struggle. I know for myself, I can struggle with perfectionism. So the getting going can be really difficult, even when we have a lot of knowledge and ideas. So the mastermind has really helped with that, and what I like about it too is that some weeks, like we talked about the weeks where we maybe do mindset work in the warm and fuzzy seat, but then there's other weeks where we have the structure of getting work done. And I think I've reflected that when we've done our sort of feedback at the end of the session, that I love those sessions where we're just forced to put things down on paper and not just sit there thinking about it, but do it. And often what I've learned from that is, oh, I can do this, And so I've already been creating some of the content for the course, getting going with those building blocks through those sessions we have. And I know myself and I know I was really stuck and I wouldn't be getting that done on my own. Right.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I mean, I think it's also, I think you're right. Like, so one thing that's like different about the mastermind is we actually meet every week, right? And depending on what week it is, we're doing something different. And two of those, assuming like 4 weeks in a month, two of those are actually live teaching, right? And so
Yeah.
just saying like, hey, this is what we're going to work on. And then by the end of these 2 hours, like you should have a good enough version of this, right? It forces, it's like we're growing together and building together, but it also forces that accountability because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know I've been guilty of this, right? Where I will put off something and I'll be like, oh, I'm not really accountable to everybody once. So I'm sure we can,
Yeah.
like stretch it out kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um, tell us a little bit about so we spend some time definitely every month building out your course, but we also build out your webinar, right? That's going to market the course. So I was wondering if you
Mhm.
could tell us a little bit about that experience and what those hours have been like for you.
Yeah, it's what's been really good about it is I think it's maybe not as scary as people might imagine. Because I wonder if, like, as we're talking about this and the structured work time, and what I would want people to know is the way I've experienced it is that you break it up, Mel, into different ways of learning, right? So
Mm,
you'll teach us, you'll show what you did, for example, on your podcasting course, which is helpful because we're not right away on the spot of we have to start producing, but we get to sit back and learn from you,
mm,
and then we have some time to work on it, sometimes like on our own, right? You'll give us a 15-minute block to do some getting it down on paper. And then I love the little breakout rooms where we're just with one or two other people because it's a very safe space, excuse me, to start sharing with our colleagues, but just a few people. And then we help each other. So those are often, I think, highlights for people of those sessions because you can get a lot done and you get feedback from your colleagues. There's really time for us to delve into it, what we're each doing, and help each other. And then we come back to the larger group with more accomplished. So I've really enjoyed that process. And for me, something that stands out, that I've often sort of reflected on at the end of those sessions is that seemed so overwhelming when I
mm,
knew that topic was coming up, like,
mm,
part of the webinar that we're going to create. And then once we actually do it, we realize that we have a lot of the knowledge
mm.
and like there's a readiness there, and the being sort of propelled forward together as a group is so helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And oh, and even with our curriculum, like I think we've defined, we've refined it over since 2021, right? And so like it's a lot of tweaking to figure out like what's helpful, what's not
Mm-hmm.
helpful. And so now that we're a few years into this, like it's a pretty like well-run curriculum. There's always stuff I think we can tweak, but overall
Mm-hmm.
it's really helpful. Joanne, Deb had a question, which is what do you find is different between creating content for education versus a therapy related course?
Yeah, that's a great question because I'm sure there might be other therapists out there, who teach in universities or in different areas. So for me, I love the openness and the creativity of we get to choose. what we want to teach, and we get to create content that's really in line with our own unique way of maybe working in therapy, for example. Or so that's something that I think we've worked on as a group, is like, I know some of my colleagues will sometimes express a bit of doubt, like, oh, here's my topic idea, and here's how other people help clients that have this issue, and I want to do it this way. And we have the freedom to do that. So I love the openness, the creativity of it, the getting to do things at my own pace as well. So there are weeks where things are just really busy, and it's nice to be able to say, okay, I can like put that on hold for a moment because I'm having a busy week with home life or my practice, and that's okay. So when I was in education, obviously there was like a lot of demands that were immediate, and I was on sort of a schedule that was not necessarily my own. So
Mm.
yeah, for me, that's kind of what stands out, maybe, is the creativity of it, the freedom of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing is generally, right, with university courses, like from a pure payment perspective, right? Like you are teaching a course and you're getting paid this amount of money, whereas with a digital course, you're creating an asset that can keep selling beyond like a set finite amount of time.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And
yeah.
so, in addition to the fact that during the university term, like, I was really tied like to
Mm,
their schedule. So for example, it was almost impossible during that 4 months, to take a week off and go on vacation because you had to be there to teach. So that was kind of limiting. And obviously the online course creation gives us a lot more flexibility there. But the pay is a big one. Yeah,
mhm.
where I am anyways, the contract instructors, like associate professors, we are not, it's
Yeah,
not, you're not going to get wealthy doing it, for sure. And
yeah,
not that money is, I loved supporting the students, but again, this is a way to support people that also can really work for us as therapists and give us that flexibility. And that's an important factor to consider, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I think all of us are like thoughtful about this stuff, right? But also I think many of us are at a point where we're like wanting to help, but also value ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
um, and I think especially like post COVID, I think it's taught us that, like how do I kind of
Hmm.
build something that is both helps others and values myself, because especially I think for many of us, we're self-sacrificing, and
Yeah.
so, um,
Yeah, that is absolutely something. That's a process I was going through the last few years, my own kind of work on me. And it involved a lot of being able to say no to things that weren't serving me well anymore. Being able to know that, my needs are just as important as others. That's, I think, something that a lot of us as people that are, healers, nurturers, whatever we want to call ourselves as therapists, like, we're drawn to this for a reason. We so much want to help others. And there is a theme I find among a lot of my friends that work in the field of the potential for burnout, because we're trying to do everything for everyone. We're often very involved in caregiving in our personal lives. And so, me taking this time out to focus on the mastermind, with an openness to, like, I have no guarantees about the outcome, even though I feel really like hopeful about it. But it was also just to be able to say to myself, I can put this time and I can invest this money in me and my goal because it's
mm,
important to me. That felt
yeah.
really good.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because I think that was like one of my like questions that I had, which is like I think sometimes in the online course creation space, there's like this sort of perspective like online course building is so easy. You're guaranteed, like, build your course, you'll just be raking in money. Like, whereas I don't know, for me, like, this will be 10 years next year as a course creator for me. And I realized like it's been more, at least for me, it's been like slow and measured growth versus this like surge. And I think one of the things that I think we do a real injustice is like we see people like maybe in like the 0.1 percentile, like killing it with these courses, and then we like expect it to um, be the norm, right? Whereas I think for most of us, it's like it is this like slow and measured growth.
Yeah. And I like that about your approach. And that is also what helped me to choose the mastermind, because I was, following some other individuals that have podcasts around course creation where it was more about the sort of bright and shiny, kind of side. And I like that realistic view. It's kind of comforting, when we started the mastermind, that you were able to. I remember, I think of some of us were a bit surprised, like we thought it was going to be super intense right away. And it was, no, we're building up, right? There's these
Mm,
building blocks we're creating. And when I settled into that and realized I didn't have to like go from 0 to 100 right off the bat, it was really comforting. And so I've felt really comfortable with reminding myself that this is a process,
mm,
that it doesn't happen all overnight, but having a lot of like excitement and hopefulness about where I may be 6 months from now, a year from now, and getting comfortable with that.
yeah,
So I agree. I think that's really important, and enjoying the process. So
yeah.
something I am finding, and I wonder if others, may experience this too, is setting aside a little bit of time for our mastermind and then also, being able to work on things in between. I actually really
Mm,
enjoy that change of pace. And I find I'm going back to my days in therapy with this renewed energy. Like I'm really
mm,
enjoying my therapy days, partly because I've cut back a little bit on that to make
mm,
time for this. And the change of pace and doing something that's really different
mm.
feels really good. It's a different kind of energy that I'm
Yeah.
I'm using when I'm creating content for the course or working on parts of it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a different, yeah, I think that you said it well. It's a different energy. And I think for all of us, right? Like we need that as we, especially as we go through our profession, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, for
Um,
sure. I'm like over 20 years into my career now. I've been practicing, well, in private practice since like around 2009, but I've been in the field since 2000. So
mm,
um, for me, I was also thinking like I want to keep working, and where do I want to focus, over the next 10 years? And so making a little bit of a move where I'm doing less therapy, but still I love my practice. I just don't want it to be like 4 full days a week or 5 full days a week. I want
yeah.
more balance. And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? For a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you're saying that because I think the vast majority of colleagues that go through our program, they still want to maintain some sort of a private practice, right? It's more
Mm.
they either just want to like cut down on hours and sort of the design the work right around the life that they want to live, right? Versus
That's
always trying
it.
to squeeze in the extra client or two, you know.
Exactly.
And I think
Hmm.
I mean there's a nuance there, and you said it earlier. Most, I would say, the overwhelming majority of us in our mastermind, like we are in seasons where we're either parents or caregiving, or there's like other
Hmm.
responsibilities outside of business. So this isn't one of these programs where it's like, why didn't you show up? You gotta, like
Yeah.
this has got to, because that's just, it's already like, we're already dealing with enough stuff in life, and this is meant to be joyful and meant to be exciting and all of those things. What's been your perspective on that? Like that energy, the collective like energy in the mastermind?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that because you're right. There's no sense of, oh, I'm behind everyone, and I've got to catch up. Or, I mean, maybe people put that on themselves a little bit, and we
Mm,
sometimes work through that,
mm,
during the mindset time, or the warm and fuzzy seat. And I think what I've really appreciated is how much colleagues are encouraging each other around that.
mm,
Like, we had a conversation just, was it last week or the week before? Because so many of us, I had been on vacation for a few weeks. So I did put everything on hold because I really felt, this was precious time with the family. And so I had to be compassionate with myself. And I think a lot of the group members are going through that because they've got kids at home in the summer and routines are off. And so we were all just reminding each other, that
yeah.
that's okay that we're there right now. Like we're going to get back to routines in a month, and there'll be probably a little more space and time to work on those next steps, and that's okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a very supportive environment around, like we're each in our own place, and there's a lot of commonalities among the group with some of those challenges, and there's just support around that, which is
Hmm.
so nice.
Yeah, I mean, at the core of it, like we're building our online course for sure, but like you're developing and you're joining with other therapists are like that have common values or in common alignment, you know? So
Mhm.
it's not just like you go through a program, like you're building friendships with people. And, you know, that's, I think, even like a side benefit is when you're with others who have known you for the course of a year, right? They become much in the same way, they become referral sources for your course, right?
Mhm.
Versus, so it's like we try on many levels to make, because we're like, I'm very keenly aware there's that pressure all of us feel like I got to be the one to market this course. And we think a lot
Mhm.
about like how do we help each other, right? And then how do I use like what I've been given with STC to like help facilitate that? So do we do some, can we do live streams like this? Can we use some of our, you know, website SEO to benefit the students? I mean, this is something, if you guys are watching on live, we're working on now is like everybody that goes through our mastermind develops their course. They're going to have a central page where it's like our course students, here's the link to their course, here's the link to the free webinar, right? And so you can, that way you're using just some of our website SEO, you know, to improve and
Mhm.
get some eyes on your course as well. So,
Yeah, that's so encouraging, right? I mean, when we're thinking about our courses being launched, knowing that there's sort of this group of people that are, I mean, everybody's so genuine and wanting each other to succeed. And it's so reassuring to have that support from colleagues and makes a big difference. Yeah, that's a huge factor, I think.
yeah, absolutely. Jan, I've got two more questions for you. And then
Hey.
again, thank you if you've been able to join us for this live. Again, feel free to drop comments, questions. We want this to be genuinely helpful for you, for me or for Joanne. All of it is fair game. So, and I'll be able to see the comments as they pop up. So, okay, what's a unexpected pitfall that came up as you went through our mastermind, and how did the mastermind help with this? Could be
Yeah,
practical,
no.
mental, whatever.
hmm Yeah, probably nothing too major, but I would say I kind of touched on it before, but the feeling torn about my course
Mm,
idea, like
mm,
coming in with one idea, then coming up with like a new idea, which was around grief, then, and I stuck with that for a little while
mhm,
and then started having some doubts about it. So that definitely created some emotions like, is
mm,
this a good idea? Is it not? I'm going on the wrong track.
mm,
So that was a little stressful.
mm,
And then again, how I overcame that was just opening up about that,
mm,
to the group and using kind of giving myself that little push to use the time during the warm and fuzzy seat hour, which, yeah, I had to kind of tell myself, like, it's okay for me to ask for help.
yeah.
I think a lot of us therapists, we're so used to helping everybody else.
Mm,
And that's actually such a good experience to let ourselves ask for help, receive the support and the guidance. And it really, that was key in helping me clarify. And there was a few times too where even in between sessions, like we haven't talked about Voxer,
mm,
but I think we all, like I know I love Voxer. So our group chat on Voxer, in between sessions, I think I also reached out at one point around my course idea and maybe my course title too, and there was a little brainstorming and it helped me to kind of move forward on that. So yeah, the pitfalls have maybe been for me just around clarifying my plan and my idea. Those would be the main ones that come to mind.
yeah, I'm so glad you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Voxer as well. So you guys are listening. I'm sure if you haven't heard of Voxer, like I'm gonna totally date myself here, but like I remember like I don't know in the 90s there was those like Nextel walkie-talkie commercials, right?
Yes.
Like, and so that's what Voxer is an app, and you literally push a button and then you can talk into it. So you have a Voxer with our team, you have one channel, and then you have a Voxer with everybody else all together. And so we don't leave you like alone to figure this out. Like it's not just like we're meeting 2 hours on Thursday and then we'll see you next Thursday, right? You have access because ideas marinate and you have questions, right? And so, but we like Voxer because it forces us off of social media, one, right? And then two, you can just design it around like your day. So for example, this is really common. I feel like, folks are like on their morning walk or something, and they'll just send a box and be like, hey everyone, I'm on my morning walk. was thinking about this. Like, what do you think, right? And just that way to like incorporate it into your life versus, it becoming another thing you got to log into all that. I think it's just so powerful.
Yeah, it's so flexible. You don't have
Yeah.
to respond to it at all if
Yeah.
and you don't have to do it right away. But yeah, to your point, Mel, like I'll be in the kitchen like cooking dinner and then I see like someone's comment come up and I like
Yeah.
press play and my kids are like, "What is that?" Like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "Oh, it's my group on Boxer."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can just kind of do that on the go and then
Yeah.
respond when I want to. It's like very flexible and I
Yeah.
think it keeps the connection going, which is really
Right.
nice. And because we have that option of actually speaking, it's also really good practice. We've For those of us that are trying to get more comfortable
Hmm.
thinking forward to when we make recordings, like
Yeah.
just speaking
Yeah.
and ad-libbing, I think it's been really good practice.
Yeah, I think that I'm so glad you highlighted that part too, because right, that's been like a side benefit of Voxer. It just gets us into that course creator mode and just talking things and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Joanne, the last question I have for you is, what's something encouraging that you would share with a colleague who's watching our live stream and is thinking about, launching an online course, but is kind of torn?
Mm-hmm. So I would say I was in that place. In fact, I might have even reached out to you, Mel, like a year before I signed
Hmm.
up. I had sort of thought about it at one point and then
Yeah.
worried about, the time and the commitment because life is really busy. And so I would say, if that's your situation or you've just started thinking about it more recently and you have blocks around time or money or doing something for you when you might be very busy about with taking care of clients or your practice or your home life, carving out time for a goal that's really important to you is really good self-care. I really feel that way. And for me, I look forward to Thursdays when we meet in the mastermind, partly because I've carved that day out and I don't just squeeze it in between clients. And I know we're all in different positions, but I would encourage people to know if you can make that happen, you'll be surprised about, how well it can work and that it doesn't mean your practice has to suffer. I just had to set some different boundaries. So I would just let people know like you deserve to do things that are important to you. Um, that, moving forward on these kinds of creative goals feels really good. And also that mixing things up and doing something that's like related to our therapy work, but in a different model, I think is continuous learning, which is really important in our field. I think it keeps us fresh and that affects us positively in so many ways in our personal and professional life. I really feel that way.
Yeah.
So
No, thank you
that's what I would
for
say.
yeah, thank you for articulating all that. I think yeah, there's just something. I mean, it reminds me of something we were talking about earlier. Just energetically, when you're with other therapists who are creating courses and
Mm-hmm.
who have this mindset to help each other out, like it's just it propels you not just with the course stuff, but like in terms of how you see your private practice, like all of that stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, it's just a very beautiful process. So Joanne,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thank you
Great.
again for doing this. And again, if you guys are watching this live, I appreciate you for taking time. I know how busy our schedules are, and yeah, just sincerely appreciate it. And if you're watching the replay, appreciate you as well. Joanne is going to be. So if you join us in this upcoming cohort that starts in September, Joanne's going to be there for the next 6 months. And so, yeah, it's just a great idea. And she will have gone through our curriculum once and refining our course. So you don't just get feedback from us, you get feedback from members who've been there for 6 months, who've kind of gone through the curriculum and said, hey, like this is a mistake I made, or, yeah. So, Joanne, appreciate you. And again, if you watched us live, thank you. And if you're watching the replay, thank you again. And Joanne, where can we learn more about you and about the course? I know we're still trying to figure out like website and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, but how can folks reach out to you?
So there's a link on the homepage of my private practice website, which is dosettherapy.com. And you can sign up for my email list on the homepage. If you scroll down, you'll see there's a little pop up, and that actually also gets people my emotion coaching guide, which is a PDF guide I developed teaching one of the therapeutic skills as part of EFFT, and it signs you up for my monthly newsletters. And I'm sharing a lot in my monthly newsletters about different topics related to families, and mental health. So I'd love for people to join my email list as a starting place to connect.
Perfect. We'll put that in the comments section of the or in the description section of this live stream. Joanne, thank you
Thank
again,
you.
and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mel.
You're welcome.